Welcome to Ontario, Canada's most populated province and home to its largest city, Toronto. If you've seen our other Canada vlogs, I would say this one is the vloggiest of them all. We're getting up to a lot of different things, like 7 different yarn stores, a national park, lots and lots of food, but it is a little bit random and all over the place. So I will be your guide as we explore Ontario. Good morning. We are in Bath, New York today. We just slept here overnight at a Love's truck stop and we're gonna be headed into Ontario. I think we're like 1 to maybe 1.5 hours from the place where we're gonna be crossing the border, and we have lots of fun stuff coming up for today. This morning though is all the boring stuff. We're gonna make up this bed here in a second. Good morning, toaster. And I'm trying to finish up any of the last bits of fruit and vegetables that we have because we cannot bring them across the border. So I've made this piece of toast with a crazy amount of bananas. Now we're in daytime mode. Our first stop is Niagara Falls, and we're going to it on the Canada side. This is one of the only places that I remember going as a kid, and now that I'm coming to it as an adult, I actually think that I went on the US side and not the Canada side. I still need to check with my parents on this, but this was Kent's absolute first time at Niagara Falls. We had a little bit of trouble finding parking, so we ended up driving by the falls a couple of times first, which was really nice. There is a lot of kitschy stuff to do around the town, but it also is really beautiful. They have done a really good job of making all the outdoor space really, really nice. The falls themselves are pretty spectacular. I mean, they are absolutely massive. And if you really want to get close to them, you can take one of these boats and you pretty much go right into the falls. Next up for the day, we are headed to Hamilton, Ontario to meet one of our friends, Courtney of I Love Tinderbox. After a quick walk along Lake Ontario, we headed to our first yarn store of the province. This is Handknit Yarn Studio, and it is in such a cute neighborhood and such a beautiful store. There were lots of lovely yarns to choose from, a lot of Canadian yarns, but I was starting my search for yarns dyed in Ontario for my Canada blanket. They have Skein Study, which is dyed in Ontario, but I didn't see any pink or purples, which is what I'm looking for my blanket. And knowing what I know now in the future, we do end up going to about 6 or 7 more stores, so it was okay to start pacing myself from the beginning. They also had some fiber from Oddcat Yarn, also out of Ontario, which was very tempting because when we went to the store, it was the very beginning of Tour de Fleece. We also found some other cool local accessories made in Hamilton, and the owner was so sweet and gave us a demo. was such a hot day that after the yarn store, we headed to get some ice cream at a local place called Williard's. They do handcrafted small batch ice cream and the flavors change all the time. And of course, I've already forgotten what we got, but it was so delicious. Yesterday we spent the day in London with one of Kent's friends. We just got lunch, got a coffee, kind of walked around, and then it was so hot that we decided to get a campsite and just kind of hunker down and do some work. But today we have a little extra time. We are not getting a campsite tonight, which means we kind of have like these hours before the sun goes down that we kind of try to use up. And so we have found ourselves in the cutest town of Stratford, and we are parked right now at a little park. So I think we might take somebody. Where'd you go? Where is he? Oh. We might take somebody on a walk. We had the most beautiful walk. We saw some wildlife, mostly just birds. Actually, I think only just birds, but it was such a cute spot. There were so many beautiful houses to look at, so much nice scenery. Something cool that Stratford is known for is their live theater, and they have some outdoor stages that we passed by. But there were so many things going on in this town for the summer. They had all these posters everywhere with lists of events. I kind of wish we could have stayed longer and been there on the weekend to attend some things. Tonight we are staying at a casino and the weather is so much nicer, isn't it, Toaster? Kent just told me that there might be a wiener dog race at the casino, so we might try to go see that in just a minute.
What are you doing?
What did you just say?
The wiener dog races were 2 days ago.
No! Do you want to do a race, Toaster? Good morning, everybody. Guess what? We're in the most road trippable town in Canada. The next morning, we stopped into another really cute town called Wellington, which is apparently the most road trippable town in Canada. We stopped at a park where we got to see the river, and we also got to see the dam. We didn't know it yet as we were driving through town, but we'll actually end up back in Wellington later today to go to a fiber mill. But first, we have a few errands to run, and then we're going to get to some yarn stores. Ken just did quite a lot of grocery shopping because after we go to Toronto, we're going to be driving for like 3 or 4 days, and we're not really sure what to expect. I don't think there's a lot going to be around, so we want to have food to cook for like a week at least, and my job is to figure out where we can put it. We're in the town of Fergus and we're gonna head to a yarn store. This is String Theory Yarn Shop, and when you walk in, it's just a nice big space. There is really cute seating up in the front where they host different events. I made a beeline straight for Fergus Yarn Company because it just stood out as a local yarn, but they have a lot of other options too that are dyed in Ontario or made in Canada. We had a really lovely time chatting with the owner, Miranda, and she was telling us about the history of this spinning wheel. It's a walking wheel that was made sometime in the 1800s and was stored in an old church. And then somebody locally found it and grabbed it before the church was getting rid of it, stored it in their own home for about 40 years, and then when they were downsizing, they brought it over to the shop, and now it is home here. This is what I love about traveling, is that it's always so random. So we were gonna go to a couple other yarn stores, but then Miranda from the last store said, hey, there's a fiber mill like 15 minutes away. So we're at the fiber mill / maybe goat farm. We're gonna go figure it out. Yep, we're back in Wellington, and we are at Wellington Fibres, which is a goat farm as they raise their own mohair goats. In the front space, they have all of their beautiful yarn that they make here and their fiber, which you can buy to spin with. And then you see all of these looms. People will gather here together and weave together, and then they're able to store their loom here as well. They've put together a bunch of kits with their yarns and designs from a local designer, Fiber Smith Designs. We were so delighted when they offered to take us into the back and show us the fiber mill. So this is a really quick, brief tour of all of the different machines involved. But if you want to see a more in-depth tour of how fiber is made, I will link a couple of videos below of previous mills we've been to in Canada. Now that we've seen where the yarn gets made, let's go have a look at some of their different bases. Most of the yarns are wool and mohair blends, and they have this really unique boucle, which is super cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before from a mill and seen actually the machine where it's made. I really wanted to get that, but I decided to go with something a little more practical and, of course, pink. As we drove back towards Toronto, we decided to stop at the really popular St. Jacob's Farmers Market. It is the biggest farmers market I have ever been to. There were so many different vendors. We did pick up some food, which we'll share in just a second, but something that they're known for is their apple fritters, but the line for it was so long, so we opted for some other snacks instead. That was a really cool farmer's market. It was massive, and we walked away with some snacks. So
I just got a beef patty.
Did you make a beef patty?
Yep. Then we have butter tarts.
Yeah, which I'm a little confused by because one, they come cold, and two, they're flavored.
We can show a picture later, but we got cinnamon sugar and peanut butter Nutella,
which is my favorite. And then I got a veggie samosa with some hummus. One more yarn store. Our final shop for today is Flying Squirrel in Waterloo. They have an entire wall full of Canadian dyers, which means that I have options when it comes to yarns for my blanket. Songbird Yarns and Fibres is really unique. They have pictures of different birds on the label, and the yarn is dyed after the birds. I think it's always really fun to see where the inspiration comes from, and it just comes with really beautiful colors. There was also Piper's Knits, and they had really fun colors as well. The Naked Sheep is also in Ontario, and they had some really fun self-striping sets. And they also have Full Moon Fibres, which is based out of Barrie, Ontario. So many options. And for something a little woollier, they had Black Sheep Farm, which is grown and processed in Ontario. There was such a good vibe at the store. You could just tell there was lots of community stuff going on, and they had this really fun display for Tour de Fleece. Someone crocheted a little squirrel, they put him on a bike, and they set up a whole little track as they worked as a group to work up kilometers and kilometers of yarn. After I picked out my yarn and we waited for it to get wound, they suggested that we head over to a grocery store that has a sandwich bar inside. So Kent ended up getting a delicious sandwich. I didn't get a sandwich, but when we got back in the car, I wanted a little something and decided to have my Nutella butter tart from earlier. Today's an exciting day because we are headed into Toronto, finally. We are going to be doing mostly knitting things today. I think we might try to go to one yarn store. We're trying to figure out the transit. And then we're definitely meeting people at a second yarn store and just generally meeting yarny friends. And then tomorrow we're going to do more like touristy things. Both the yarn stores we're headed to today are just stunning, so prepare yourself. The first one we're going into is Eweknit, and this yarn store has a totally different feel. It is like a boutique and just a beautiful rainbow of color, but in such a sophisticated way. I feel like if you need to make a garment, this is the place to come to because they have so many different yarns to choose from, and it seems like of the yarn lines they have, they carry about 1 million colors in that. They also had racks and racks of samples, which is just so handy when you're trying to figure out what to make. Of course, I went around looking for yarns that were made or dyed in Canada, and I found a couple of good ones. Something special about this store is the owner, Claudia, is also a well-established pattern designer, and you can see some of her beautiful patterns here displayed. We met up with a knitting friend for lunch, and then all together we went to our next store. I told you we were going to 2 stunning yarn stores today, and I wasn't lying. The Knitting Loft is spectacular. Everything in here is so bright and tidy and just a welcoming rainbow of color. They have their very own TKL yarn line, which comes in a variety of bases. There are superwash and non-superwash options, there's sparkle, there's suri, basically everything for everybody. They also have some of their own colorways in other brands, like this one from Feisty Fibres and their Spin Cycle color After Midnight. Oh, and there's a downstairs. As you can see, I'm walking out with a bag full of yarn so I can make that cool vest that we saw in there earlier. We're meeting one more yarny friend at a bakery and coffee shop called Bobette and Belle. They had so many delicious treats to choose from. We ended up with 2 Canadian treats, a Nanaimo bar and a butter tart. A Nanaimo bar is a no-bake dessert, and it has a chocolate crumb base, creamy custard filling, and chocolate ganache on top. I really enjoyed it, but Kent was a little indifferent. And then the butter tart we got was even better than the one we had the day before. Kent and I ended the day with a little bit of all-you-can-eat sushi, and on the ride back to our campsite, we got to see all the city lights. The next morning started out with a stressful ride to get to the correct train to get back into Toronto. So even though we're looking very happy here, we were stressed. Today is all about sightseeing. We're not doing any yarny things. We're really just getting to know the city, and we have one of Kent's friends to take us around. We're starting off with breakfast, and we're having pea meal bacon on a bun. And pea meal bacon is essentially what we call Canadian bacon in the States, and I got mine with cheese and an egg. Next, for the boys, we headed to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and this actually ended up being pretty fun. They had several interactive exhibits, so we all took turns shooting the puck and then trying to defend the net. We made a quick stop for some coffee, and then we were off to see some Toronto landmarks. By early afternoon, we really needed a break, and so we decided to head to a brewery to sit down and cool off. And then the rest of the day really just turns into us eating all of the things. So we went to an Indian fusion place for lunch, which was super, super good. Got more coffee. and then went and sat in the shade in one of the popular parks here. We got more ice cream, and again, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten which flavors that we got, but they were delicious. And then we got momo, which is a type of dumpling, also very good. And we ended the night at a super cool cocktail place where you basically give them different flavors and tastes and vibes that you want, and they create a cocktail just for you. At this point, you may be starting to think, did they only go to Toronto? And we did not. We actually started our entire Canada trip in Ottawa almost 2 months earlier. But since from Ottawa we went to Montreal and then stayed in Quebec and traveled east from there, we've been saving this little bit of footage for this video. I know I said earlier that the store in Hamilton was our first yarn store in Ontario, but that's not actually true. We went to Wabi Sabi in Ottawa, and that was actually our first yarn store in all of Canada. In this shop is the first time I'd ever seen a roving room, or just any kind of fiber that is sold either by weight or by length, and I just think that's super cool. While we were in Ottawa, they were having their annual Tulip Festival, and while we didn't have time to get out and walk around, we did drive through several times, and it was just stunning. Now let's catch back up with real time, and I'll let myself explain what we're doing next. Today begins our super long drive. I think we have like 23 hours in total to drive through Ontario, and then to Winnipeg is like our next destination. But before we get too far outside of Toronto, we're like an hour and a half outside of Toronto, and we have been told we need to stop at Kartha? How do you say it? Anyway, we're gonna get some ice cream. So I got Moose Tracks, which has little Reese's peanut butter cups in it, and I was gonna get something called Wolf Paws, but then it was like really similar. It just had like brownies or something. So instead I got Constellation because it's their new summer flavor, and it's dark chocolate and like something else. So we're gonna share. And this is their small. Buckle up for some really pretty views. We are spending the next 4 days driving, so you're going to see a lot of trees, a lot of sky, and we have a couple of fun stops planned. As we're working our way across Canada, we're trying to try as much local food as possible, but we're also trying to try as many snacks as we can that are purely Canadian. Smarties are kind of like M&Ms, that would be their equivalent in the US, but they are slightly different. They're a little bit thinner, they're a little bit crunchier, and to me they taste a little more like chocolate. I've just come back to the van after taking a shower, and kids got the bed down. He got out the toaster oven and the rice maker, so I'm starting on some of the dinner stuff. He put popcorn out. I think that means we're having a movie night. Today we're stopping in Puckasaw National Park and we are going to do some hiking. We ended up taking Toaster on this hike. He absolutely loves hiking and he was such a champ. This was sort of the first hike back for all three of us, and it ended up being a little more difficult of a trail than we actually expected. Out of the three of us, Toaster is definitely the most athletic hiker. He has no problem with inclines or, going downhill or anything, so we're always the ones slowing him down. Once we got to the top of our hike, we were rewarded with some beautiful views of Lake Superior. We drove a little further down the road and stopped at another scenic spot. This is Pebble Beach, and all of these rocks get kind of washed up onto the shore, and they're huge. They're not pebble sized, but they're as smooth as pebbles. Our last stop before we leave Ontario is Kenora, and we're stopping here because we want to go to Ye Old Chip Truck. Every day they make fresh cut fries here. They're super thick and fluffy, and they were honestly so delicious. And you can get them dressed a few different ways, but we just got ours with seasoning. That's it for us this week. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week in Manitoba.